From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Chiefs Kingdom, you are Super Bowl champions, as is this team. There's so much to talk about how they got here, the game that they got, but just take a second and breathe that in.
Dude, I don't even know how to breathe that in. My heart. Okay, so I have a heart rate monitor on my watch, and my heart was going over 100 beats a minute the entire game.
Wow.
That was I just was nervous. A lot of nervous energy, a lot of pent up energy, just real nervous for that game. And man, people were going off during the game about losing and about the defense not playing well enough. I'm just sitting there going, they've been doing pretty well, honestly, for as good as the 49ers looked. But congratulations, Kansas City Super Bowl champions. It's a lot to talk about.
It really is. And folks, we're going to go through it all tonight. It is late. I just warn you, we're both a little bit hoarse. Evidently, we were both yelling at things. I had a house full of people. I know Chris was busy. So it's one thing when we were talking about it last week, because it's a unique process to get to this game and get here. But to win it at this point on year 60 of the organization, 50 years since you went last, 100-year anniversary of the league, and then you have Pat Mahomes do what he did. And the story of the day is clearly Patrick Mahomes, 24 years old. He's been an MVP. He's now been a Super Bowl MVP, and he's won them a championship. And that's not to take away from the rest of the team. I'm just saying that's incredible.
24 was drafted 3 years ago. He has started 36 games for Kansas City and for the Chiefs, and Super Bowl champion, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. And, you know, honestly, I'm almost dumbfounded when it comes to start talking about that guy, because you watch what he's able to do. You watch the way he plays, and he did not play a good game in the first three quarters. Just be fair about it. He really didn't. He struggled, and he missed some throws that he knows that he missed. And I think that's part of the reason he was able to do what he was able to do later. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you look at the thing that still impresses me the most about him is he's 24. He's a young kid, and it doesn't matter who asks what, who says what. It's deflection, 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 deflection. I'm not taking credit for this. I have an amazing team around me. I have Andy Reid. I have, you know, all these playmakers around me. That's beyond cool.
It's impressive. I mean, it's a maturity that you don't always expect. And I want to point this out, and I didn't know this until the NFL sent out the press release. But when I got it, I was pretty shocked. And folks, it's going on 11 o'clock now, Central Time. We're late after the game. We've done the live stream on RGR. Now we're getting it, so we got a little bit more information. He's the third youngest to win a Super Bowl MVP award. And check out the two guys that were younger than him. Marcus Allen of the LA Raiders at the time, who finished his career in Kansas City, just saying. And Lynn Swann, both of whom are in the Hall of Fame today. I think that's significant.
It's extremely significant. You look at what he was able to do tonight, and like I said, I'm not trying to be harsh, but he did not play well the first three quarters. Mm-hmm. And he was rattled by pressure, and part of that's on him, part of that was on the line. I think that he walked into pressure a little bit, and don't get me wrong, the line didn't do its job for most of the game, for a lot of the first part of the game, and I'll freely admit that. The interior of the line really struggled, and they really could have used a lot of help in the interior, and I think that that's something they're going to look at in the offseason. But when it mattered most, he stepped up and he delivered. I mean, you're sitting there, it was 2nd and 15 with 7.5 minutes to go, and he throws a ball that should have been a easy first down to Tyreek Hill, and he grounded it.
Yep. And I'm honestly, not convinced he's not partially injured. I'll just say that.
Who, Mahomes?
Yeah, I think his hand got smashed pretty early on in that game. And I think that, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, and I know we need to go to a break too, so let's finish your thought. Folks, we'll be right back. So I'm with you. He grounded that ball to Tyreek in was that the third quarter?
No, it was the fourth.
Okay.
It was the fourth quarter, because the very next play, after they went to break to check it, and they gave San Francisco a chance to challenge it, and San Francisco challenged, and they won the challenge, and they should have, because it was easily incomplete.
Yeah.
But Tyreek Hill was open, and yes, Mahomes was under pressure, but that's a throw he makes 99 times out of 100.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, and let's be truthful. Yeah, he did, and let's be truthful. Both those interceptions are on him.
Absolutely. So and it goes, but the very next play, 3rd and 15, he hits Tyreek Hill for 40 yards.
Yeah.
And I mean, what do you say there? What do you do as a defense?
Well, and I'll say this too, is just not that he completed those passes or that Tyreek got open or that all that came together, but I mean, right there, that was 7 minutes left, right? And I have in my notes here at 6:20. That's when it got real. And I felt like the entire offense as a whole stepped up and responded at that point. I thought the blocking got better. I thought he got quicker at making his reads. I thought Mahomes got quicker at being able to get away from pressure just enough rather than what I thought was more running for his life in the first half. And I felt like that offense, and honestly, I think they were fed by the defense, responding to the fact that they didn't get down early. They were tied at half. They didn't do what they normally do. They got punched in the mouth in the third quarter and they responded.
Dude, and you start talking, there was BJ ran into Peter Schrager after the game, and Schrager said even in the third quarter, he was on the Chiefs sideline, and none of those players believed that they were out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them believed they were in the game. And, you start looking at and we're going to have a lot more to talk about when it comes to the Super Bowl. I'm still just in a state of shock right now, and I apologize. The excitement really isn't coming through because I'm just overloaded with everything that went on. But with 7 minutes to go, Kansas City's down 10 points, and they win by 11.
Right. 21
3 touchdowns in 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had people screaming about how bad the defense was in this game for Kansas City. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know what game you're watching because they've actually been playing pretty well. I'm not saying that they were great, but they got stops when they needed to. Yep. And they kept them from just driving the ball down their throats on a regular basis. And yes, they let them score. And yes, I'll give them that. That's fine. But it's a big deal to make them go 8, 9, 10 plays to score as opposed to scoring quickly.
Yeah, and it's like what we talked about last week. It's one thing, they're a great running offense. They ran over everybody. They know how to run the ball, but you didn't let them have those home runs, those 40, 50, 60-yard runs that scored points and did it quickly. Well, they made them earn it.
They did. And then, we will talk about this later in the week because I think we're going to have to. I don't really want to get into it too much right now because I'm still on my high and it's a crap. I really don't know how I felt about that George Kittle offensive pass interference call. Did he straighten his arm out? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Very questionable, though, because
I didn't find it questionable at all.
Well, I struggle with it because I've seen that play not called many more times than I've ever seen it called. So I understand it doesn't. It may not have ended up mattering. They probably weren't going to get a touchdown. It might have only been a field goal. Regardless, what that showed me, though, when you're watching the end of the first half and the way the 49ers had been playing and really the way they played the entire game, Kyle Shanahan became what Andy Reid has been.
Mm-hmm.
He went into a conservative shell, and that really screwed San Francisco.
Here's my question to you, and it's not even that it was conservative, but they had the ability to run the ball out if they wanted 2 consecutive pass plays that stopped the clock. I thought those were miscalculations on Kyle Shanahan's part that the Chiefs took advantage of, and I won't fault them for that. They didn't cause that, but it certainly put them in position. You make stops in the pass game at that point, you stop the clock. And I felt like those were key plays that turned them around. I thought Frank really stepped up and was the dog that he's been telling us he's been all season.
Yeah, he had a huge play in the game's biggest moment. And I'm sitting there and people were going crazy because it looked like it was an incomplete pass, and I saw the flag come out, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh crap, what happened?" So I'm glad it ended up just being what it was, illegal touching, and it made sense that they called him down in the grasp. And congratulations, Frank Clark. I was wearing your jersey again tonight, and I'm going to admit that. But you watch that game, and he was shut out a lot of the game, and then he ends up coming up big in one of the biggest moments of the game possible and makes a play. And we haven't even started talking about really the way the defense played most of the game, and Tyrann Mathieu on the sideline just going crazy.
I was going to wait for the third segment for that, so let's just hold up a second, because you're right. I don't want to shortchange the offense, because the offense took their punches. They had trouble. They couldn't move the ball. They were having miscues, both in the pass game. Fisher got run over a couple of times. I thought Fish played a decent game, but he clearly had a couple of plays that didn't mess with him. LDT had a couple of mistakes. That led to the offense bogging down, not being able to be what they were. And I think that they got it all squared away. And before we talk about what happened with the defense, I think that's it's key to point out that it's not just Mahomes, because it takes all 11 guys at that point. But his leadership, I think his ability to just keep on firing, I thought that was really critical in leading that particular group. And I'm sure Andy Reid was then obviously a part of that as well. But it really comes down to me that you spread the ball around. Sammy had a couple of catches. McCole didn't get much action, but Tyreek did. Kelsey obviously did. And I just felt like they had to do partially against the best defense in the league, one that was touted coming in so much by national talking head media that you would think the Chiefs had no chance. They had to deal with them, and they were a stout defense, but they kept it together and they kept fighting for 4 quarters. And I mean, like, for 4 full quarters, and that's what it took.
And you also look at the fact that they were disrespected, I think, the entire week. And because it was all about San Francisco's defense. It was all about San Francisco's defense. It was all about the Chiefs' offense. There was nothing talking about, and honestly, I heard people talking about San Francisco's offense was just going to run them over. Mm-hmm. So they got disrespected the entire week. And yes, they allowed 20 points, but you know what? Doesn't matter when you score 31.
Yeah.
I mean, they won by 2 scores. Kansas City's defense got it done when it mattered most. That's all you can really say. And Kendall Fuller, thank you for that interception.
And we'll get into the details about that when we get back. I'm glad you mentioned Fuller. I thought that was a great break on the ball. I wish he'd come up with that. But I want to tell you guys this, for all of you listening. I'm not the biggest guy. Chris towers over me.
You're
but
tiny.
Yeah, okay. Compared to you, I'm tiny.
You're old, but okay.
I am old. I'm a little over 6 foot. Tyrann Mathieu's about 4 inches shorter than me on a good day. And he scares the crap out of me. The way that he was on that sideline, I think, was a major turning point. And it's one of those deals that you're a team that's been very, I would characterize them as a group, as a family. They've been very tight and positive. And to have your leader explode like that, I was a bit concerned that could turn to a negative. But that defense took it to heart, and they stepped way up.
We're recording this at the perfect time because I just saw a tweet from Tyrann Mathieu about that exact play. Fox Sports tweeted out 3 hours ago, Tyrann Mathieu is visibly upset on the sideline. He retweeted it and said, I understand the standard, and I refuse to watch us play below that.
Nice.
And
I mean, that's what it is, right? That's what he's there for.
What else can you say?
Right? I mean, I know it was a long season, folks. I know Frank Clark got off to a slow start. And I know that Tyrann didn't make as many plays until later in the season. But you got to give Brett Veach credit. The 2 dogs that he brought in for this defense to help Spags paid off big down the stretch. And those 3, and I include Steve Spagnuolo as much as anybody, if not more so, really paid off. To do this in the first year of a complete system change on the defensive side of the ball, and to be able to take a team that ran for 220 yards last week. And yes, did they give up yardage in the run game? Yes. Did they allow a couple of drives? Yes. At the end of the day, they stopped them from being the dominant force they had been, and that all comes down to those 3 guys.
Well, and I got you're talking about Brett Veach. I just got a couple more tweets for you. Chris Jones was quoted by Rustin Dodd, "We're going to party all effing night." But he also said that Brett GM is going to the Hall of Fame and they're going to build a effing dynasty in Kansas City. Later, Chris Jones decides he wants to tweet out himself, "Let's effing go. I love you all so much. I plan to stay in Kansas City for a decade. This is only the beginning."
Man, I hope so. Take a discount, Chris, because the numbers look harsh to me. I've only started to run them down. In fact, if you guys missed it on the Spot Track podcast, check them out. They do a great job, and they went through the whole roster. There's like 22 free agents coming. We're going to deal with that. I don't want to get too sidetracked on that tonight. Tonight's
no, I don't either. But
party.
I had to share that because if Chris Jones wants to be here, he will get a deal done.
Yeah,
but it's a question of whether or not he wants to be here, and it sounds like he wants to be here. If he's willing to give them a little bit of a discount, then he can be here. Yeah. And honestly, we haven't even talked about one of the guys that I thought was a possible player of the game. And I'm not talking Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes played fantastic, but Sammy Watkins came up big when it mattered most at different times in this game.
Man, I tell you what.
And that shocked me.
Well, and here's my big thing. And you folks, you might have heard me say this on RGR because I did get into this a little bit earlier. I was concerned a few days ago when Sammy brought up, hey, I might just sit out in 2020 because he's pretty much relegated. He understands where his contract is versus his contribution. He's going to be released. I think they've probably already communicated that. And to say that pregame, I felt was a distraction. I was a little disappointed in him for doing that.
I'm with you 100%.
But I will say this. If Sammy's willing to renegotiate and drop that down to a place that helps the team make the moves they have to make in order to bolster the roster to try and do this again in 2020, then I'm all for it because Sammy did a couple of really critical things. Sammy got this offense off to a start in week 1. I mean, horse race out of the gate, threw it all to the wall, right?
Yep.
And I know he disappeared. He had some injuries. He had a couple of games where he had just a few catches. But the last couple of weeks in the playoffs, he was consistent. He made a contribution. He came up with not a ton of catches, but big contribution catches in the Super Bowl.
Playoff football, Sammy was huge.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be that kind of volume, but it was enough. 5 catches for nearly 100 yards tonight. That's incredible for a guy who went,
well, it was the timing of the
16
catches,
weeks.
too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you. He played a great game, and you're right. He disappeared at times this season. He disappeared at times during this game, but he made plays when it mattered most. And I have to ask you this question because I'm sitting there watching the end of the game, and Kansas City gets the ball back with like a minute and a half left, and I'm like, okay, if they can just get a first down, it's probably over.
Mm-hmm.
Williams breaks outside, and I'm thinking, just go to the ground. The entire time, just go to the damn ground.
Get those 10 yards and drop, right?
Exactly.
And by the way, how did they spring that?
Anthony Sherman.
I just wanted to put that out there, folks.
Yeah,
we'll talk about the fullbacks here coming up probably tomorrow.
Who cares about
Matt a lot of grief.
No,
the fullbacks had an impact, not only in that play.
Obviously, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I love Anthony Sherman, and Juszczyk really played a fantastic game.
He did.
And he is a real weapon out of the backfield catching the ball. But when Williams broke that run, everybody in my house is going absolutely bat crap crazy and insane. And I get it. But I'm sitting there going, if he would have just gone down, the game would be over. And they're all like, well, yeah, it's over anyway. And I'm like, yeah.
Mostly. Well, and I'll tell you this, 2 points. Yes, I would have preferred that as well, but
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
But playoff Damian showed up again.
Oh no, absolutely.
Damian, we know we're not happy the way he comes back from injury. Sometimes that takes a little longer than I think it should. I know I'm not alone in that opinion either, but sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that when McCoy was brought in, I think he was brought in to challenge Williams, and I think that Williams took it personally, and I think that's why he was able to do what he was able to do. That's really where I was wanting to go. And the other side of it is on his first touchdown, that pass, if it's not called a touchdown, it never gets called a touchdown.
Yeah.
So that game was that close.
Yeah. I mean, although, first and goal, I'm not too worried about. But
no, it was fourth. It was third down, third and goal.
Oh, right. Yeah,
that was the third and goal.
I'm still fairly confident about that. But I see exactly what you mean. And then to seal it as well. I mean,
right.
Playoff Damian Williams is on the roster for that reason. He is there for the playoffs as far as I am concerned, because he's shown up consistently every postseason. And that said, just to go back to Juszczyk for a minute, Juszczyk played a great game. He showed what a move tight end / fullback can be. And folks, there's a reason John Lovett was on this roster in camp. They missed him. Oh, yeah, I'm going there full steam, because there's room for Anthony Sherman for a traditional fullback as well as John Lovett for a move fullback on this team. They can do some of the very same things that Juszczyk does with John Lovett. There's going to be changes in this offense coming. And yes, we're going to celebrate this week, this victory, but there's a lot of cool things that could be coming down the pike.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fantastic things coming down the pike when you're talking about this offense. And, honestly, if they fix their interior offensive line, which I fully expect they will do some of that this offseason, Eric Fisher, I think, is a good left tackle. He's not an all-pro, but he's good.
Exactly.
And Joey Bosa not Joey. Nick Bosa is just fantastic. And he struggled tonight, and I get it. I mean, it happens and it sucks, and you're going to have those games. But you know what? In the end, he got it done enough. And he got to a point. I'm sorry, last thing I want to say about Nick Bosa. I do think, and I thought it was interesting, because I'm sitting there watching the end of that game, and Nick Bosa is getting fired up, and he jawed at Eric Fisher right before Kansas City went and scored 21 points. I'm not saying that changed things in Eric Fisher's mind, but I wouldn't have been jawing at the guy at that point in the game, because I wouldn't have wanted to piss somebody off.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's different when you're in the heat of competition. You're two alpha guys going at it. But I will say this. Yes, Eric Fisher is not an all-pro. He's not elite. But you saw what an elite pass rusher, and everybody says that Nick Bosa is elite. I'm not really ready to put him there, but he's very good, I'll say. But you saw what a good tackle can do. If Bosa that ball had come out, and Bosa did knock it out, it was a nice play. If Mahomes had lost that, maybe I'd be feeling different like that. But a very good tackle was able to neutralize. Did you hear D Ford's name at all? Because I certainly didn't.
I was wanting to mention that. Yeah, thank you, Mitchell Schwartz. You definitely deserve your Super Bowl ring, because you played a hell of a game tonight.
Right, and you neutralized Ford, and you keep Bosa from being a game wrecker. So in my book, a very good tackle played above his rating in terms of beating an elite front tonight. And yes, it wasn't pretty at all times. LDT certainly made a couple of mistakes as well. We'll talk about his future with this team later. I'm very happy with what Fisher did, and he's a bring it to work every day kind of guy. And I think they need that.
Absolutely. No, they absolutely need that kind of guy. And, I actually read an article with Mitchell Schwartz talking in the Players Tribune earlier today, and it talked about Eric Fisher being a leader on that offensive line, and he should be a leader of the offensive line when you're the left tackle. But it goes beyond that, because to me, Fisher really was playing some of his best football this season. And since he came back from injury, Kansas City did not lose a single game.
Right? It's not a coincidence. It was a significant injury, and it took him a while to get back, and that it paid off. And I agree with you. That's something he should be looked at as a leader. And I know, man, I don't want to say it in a way that is shocking, but when Eric Fisher first came to this roster, he was not terribly well received as a guy, as a 1-1, as the top draft pick of a draft. He's what now? Only the third number 1 overall pick to win a Super Bowl? Is that what I heard last week? I think that's accurate. That's significant, and especially for a guy who's a tackle, because most number 1s are generally quarterbacks, right? So for a guy who doesn't have the control in having the ball in his hands every single play, that's a significant thing. And that class kind of fell apart. I do feel, and tonight probably solidified it, that Eric Fisher was justified in being the top pick of that draft. Dorsey didn't go out on that much of a limb because of what we've seen happen to the rest of that class. So
that class is
good
horrible.
for him. I wasn't going to say it like that, but okay.
I will. Okay. That's fine. I get it.
I'm good with that. I think it all came together, though. And the 5 guys on that line tonight, and nothing against Andrew Wiley. I feel for him. He's put in good work for this team. I don't know what his future is either. But Wisniewski was a significant player on this line, playing next to Fisher these last 3 games in particular. And I will not underestimate just how much of an influence his play had on the outcomes of these 3 playoff games.
If I told you just statistically that Patrick Mahomes throws 2 picks and fumbles the ball twice, doesn't necessarily lose him, but fumbles the ball twice and is sacked 4 times, Kansas City doesn't win that game.
Yeah, I'm crying in a corner with a beer.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and that's what they overcame.
Yeah.
4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 2 horrific interceptions that were both on Patrick. Second one, no, I know. But the second one, I still say Hill should have caught it, but regardless, it was on Patrick because the ball wasn't where it was supposed to be. But regardless, Kansas City, you have a Super Bowl championship team. First time in 50 years. Your quarterback is 24 years old. He will not turn 25 until the start of next season. And he's already won the league MVP and the Super Bowl MVP. It's an amazing time to be a Chiefs fan.
Stop it. You're making me feel old. It's one of those things that I worry if I can continue to remember these things. But, it all comes down to me that this win, honestly, this postseason run tells you that this particular 53-man, and we know that there's 11 guys on IR, they count too. The 10 guys on the practice squad count too. But this particular team, every organization is different every year because there's a few guys that come and go and whatever. This team didn't give up ever. And that really says something about them getting all the way here and getting this championship.
How much did they miss Juan Thornhill tonight?
Don't even get me started.
I just have to say, Juan, I've seen your tweets, buddy. I'm glad you're getting a Super Bowl ring. You deserve it. And I'm looking forward to you being in a Chiefs uniform for multiple years to come. I'm still at a spot where I'm almost at a loss for words. 50 years since they last won the Super Bowl, and now they're Super Bowl champions again. And Kansas City, I can't imagine what Power and Light District is like right now. I know the Chiefs are celebrating in Miami and they're partying because Travis Kelce has definitely fought for his right to party.
On a song that he never heard on the radio because he's too young.
Right. And you watch these guys celebrate. You watch these guys play the game that they obviously love playing, and you see all of this. I just don't have words for it because, you have a guy like Tyreek Hill who had a very hard offseason and is able to come through at one of the biggest points in the season and just played fantastic tonight, had over 100 yards. Sammy Watkins had almost 100 yards receiving. When Travis Kelce caught his touchdown pass, I loved that he basically ran towards the sideline and spiked the ball because he didn't want to celebrate it. Yeah. Because they were still down at that point and he knew what was going on. He's like, nope, I'm gonna basically Gronk spike this and I'm gonna go run to the sideline and we're gonna be good. And they were. Just this team, and it is all encompassing in Mahomes' heart. I really don't know what else to say because you watch him, and after that second interception, him coming off the field, you could tell how pissed off he was.
Yeah.
And look what he was able to do.
And man, I want to say this before
21 points on the best defense in the NFL.
Right. There is no, and I think it was Stranahan that asked him this afterwards. is there any point deficit that you begin to get worried about? And he just deflected the question because there isn't.
And there shouldn't be.
And I want to say this too before I forget. One of the first things that he mentioned when he was asked about this accomplishment and how he got here was that he threw in Alex Smith and what he learned from him and how he got there. And I thought that was a really classy act in a moment that could have just been washed away as being washed up, caught up in the moment. But he remembered Alex Smith and where Alex is right now, who is an incredible story in and of itself. But there's a lot of people that weren't in that stadium tonight that helped get them there. And I think that's key to remember that as we go on. We're going to celebrate this win all week long. We're going to get Matt Derrick, whenever he comes, down to earth, because I'm sure he's having trouble running through Miami.
There's still so much to talk about. I mean, we didn't even get into half the things I wanted to talk about this game. There just isn't enough time on a podcast. We could go for 2 hours, easy.
Yeah, and folks, we are supposed to be a 25-minute format podcast, so we're going to do our best to keep to that this week. It's not going to work very well, but we'll do what we can, and we will be with you all week. There's no reason to wander away yet. Parade's Wednesday. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about more of the nuts and bolts that went through this championship. Enjoy it this week. We will be with you every single day. We'll have many more guests back on to go through what it means for this organization. I'm sure we'll hear from our friend Seth. We'll try to get a bunch of other folks whose voices you are familiar with. But I hope you enjoyed this ride, Chris. It's been great going through this with you. 4 years on this podcast now, waiting for this moment. Thanks for doing it.
Dude, I'm giddy right now. I'm going to try to go to bed here in a little bit, and I just still don't know that I'm going to be able to. But all that matters, Super Bowl champions. Patrick Mahomes is amazing, and Kansas City, he's going to get a contract soon, and he's basically, at this point, Clark, he could write a blank check because he's going to deserve it. And, it was amazing to watch the end of that game. And we are back with Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. He is still in Miami covering this team, and it looks like the team is actually back at this point, and Matt's still stuck there, so that's kind of funny in my mind. But how you doing, Matt?
I am doing pretty well. It was a long night. I am fresh off of a 75-minute nap this morning before getting right back to it. So, but nights like that, it will give you the adrenaline to keep on going.
I know you were working on a number of things, but before we get too far down the road, what's the newest publication that's coming out?
Well, the newest one is that you all can pick up the commemorative edition of At Last, the 2019 Chiefs and their trip to the Super Bowl. You can get it right now. You can pre-order. It's on triumphbooks.com/ChiefsWin. And that's Triumph Books, like Triumph, the insult comic, I guess. Triumph Books /ChiefsWin. You can pre-order now. It is going to be available everywhere within the reach of Chiefs Kingdom, wherever you buy books. The official release date is the 11th. It could hit sooner. They're printing them as we speak. But yeah, it covers the entire season. Finished up the last couple of chapters yesterday. There's a foreword in the book by Kevin Harlan, the broadcaster from CBS and former Chiefs voice.
Nice.
That was very nice. It was great working with Kevin. I really appreciated him taking the time to do that. So hopefully everybody will enjoy it. Lots of pictures. So I got to see the final layout this morning, and it looks fantastic. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
I'm looking forward to it. And I realized you had to write the last couple chapters because it was still unwritten as of last night. Very late night for you. I saw a couple of media hits that you did as well. Don't want to rehash any of that, but just biggest takeaway for you before I get into specifics. What stood out about this team in general last night during that game?
It's just the don't quit mentality. I mean, I know we've talked about it, and maybe that is a little bit beaten into the ground at this point. But I think that there was a point there in the fourth quarter with about 9 minutes left when they're coming back onto the field for that drive, where I think the only people in that stadium that thought the Chiefs were winning were the guys on the field and the sidelines. I don't think anybody else did. I don't think the Chiefs fans did. Nobody had checked out. I mean, they were hanging in there. But
that's all you need.
I can exactly. I mean, I can speak for the media. I know everybody there thought this game was over. I was close. I mean, I had started the Chiefs lose version of the story because you got to be ready. So I think everybody in the press box and the auxiliary press box and out in the backyard of the stadium, wherever they put people for when they credential 3,000 people for a football game. But that
I wasn't one of. Thank you very much.
That's a whole other podcast, and we should do that one day. But
please don't go down that road with him.
But I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, it is amazing to me that this team just absolutely has no quit. They did not have any doubts in their mind whatsoever they were going to win. And this is even when they were playing terrible. And Patrick Mahomes was not playing like Patrick Mahomes. And they still believe they were going to get it done.
Well, I loved him coming out after the game and saying those throws were completely on him. And don't get me wrong, I know they were. But his willingness to always be one of his harshest critics has always been something that I've really admired with him. And his ability to look at that play and say, look, I let my team down. And that's really what he came out and said after the game. And yet he was still able to overcome it all and put them in a position to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have that if you're going to be the kind of quarterback that he is. You can't make excuses. You can't take the mistakes and just try and brush them away. You gotta live with them. You gotta embrace them, and he does that, and that's why I think that he doesn't often make the same mistake twice. And that, let's face it, that interception to Warner was, I would say, in my memory, I mean, maybe there's one out there that's worse. I think it was the worst throw he's ever made in his entire career at this point. It was a bad interception. And
maybe Hightower is the only one I could think of that would be close.
Maybe, but this one was, I mean, it was a bad spot in the field. It was bad situation. I mean, he's had some interceptions before that were maybe bad picks, but they were also usually a lot of them like on third down and, desperate situations. And this were basically the same thing as a punt. But this one was just a killer. I mean, that was a bad one. And then the other interception, I mean, Tyreek Hill, he took it. I mean, he knew that was his fault. He knew that was his mistake. He owned up to it too. I mean, and that's what winning teams do. I mean, they don't pass the buck. They don't look for excuses why they didn't win. And you know what? That's a difference between this year's team and last year's team, because last year that defense made excuses for why they didn't win. This team doesn't make any excuses.
And how much of that, I mean, we saw what happened on the sideline. I want to get your opinion on that in a second, but how much of that is the Frank Clark that we've seen the last 6 or 8 weeks in just refusing to even consider being somebody that loses? I mean, this guy, sometimes I think he's a little out there, but good Lord, he pushes people.
Oh, he's out there. There's no doubt about that. But you're right. I mean, I don't know how you could play with this guy without, feeling that you've got to match his energy, that you got to keep up, because I don't know how you could be on the field with a guy like that, though, with how he plays and how hard he goes every single down, and be able to say that you're taking off a play or, just not give it your all on any single snap. And that certainly has changed in the second half of the season. And this team, his teammates knew what he was going through in the first half of the season. So they understood, what he was sacrificing or what he was trying to do with playing through the pain and through the difficulties. But the second half of the season, with the tone that he set, I think that and obviously, just some of the things that Steve Spagnuolo did, I think those were the two biggest factors with this defense turning around, was Clark getting healthy and being able to be himself out there.
Well, and then you start looking at what you saw on the sidelines with Tyrann Mathieu just basically exploding, what looked like exploding. And the announcers are saying that Spagnuolo had to go over and calm him down, and Chris Jones had to. And you're sitting there going, is this the time where they take a step back? And I went and rewatched the third quarter after San Francisco scored their last points. And I watched the rest of the game, and I charted it. San Francisco gained 59 yards with 11 minutes to go, I think, in the third quarter. They only had 59 yards on 4 drives. That is a remarkable output from the defense to be able to put up those kinds of numbers and stop them.
Yeah, and I heard Eric Eager on the radio this afternoon, and he was talking about the fact that I think that Garoppolo went 1 of 9 for 20 yards when under pressure, and almost all of those pressures were in the second half and in the fourth quarter. That's that's remarkable production from your defense. I mean, a little bit disappointing maybe that you only got 9 pressures the entire game, but the fact that they were all clustered there at the end when they needed them, that's a big deal.
Well, and the Chiefs, and one of the things that it was also pointed out was the Chiefs held Jimmy Garoppolo to a 2.8 QBR in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
2.8.
That is ridiculous.
I'm not sure how you calculate that, but there's got to be a lot of factors. We're going to take a quick break, folks. When we get back, we're going to dig into what those are. And I don't know if I cut you off there before the break, Matt. I was going to ask you something about who provided those pressures, because according to PFF, Suggs was actually the one who got the most of them. And again, is it a function of them having to pass in the fourth quarter, and that's why there was opportunity there?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, especially there at the end, once the Chiefs got the lead back, I mean, at that point, it was simply the 49ers needed to throw the ball. They had to put it in Jimmy G's hands, and the Chiefs could just go back and go after him with everything they had. And that's a bad combination because that's just not going to go well for the 49ers at any time. I thought that, for most of the game, I mean, and this is just watching the game live. I haven't had a chance to go through and watch any of the replays and the film yet. But I thought there was, I mean, there were some key pressures brought by a lot of guys. I mean, Chris Jones had the huge one that really helped set up the Breland interception. Pennell was in on that too. He's the one that kind of, kept Garoppolo from being able to escape and then make it that horrible attempt to throw the ball away. Clark had a few, I thought, really, really nice moves. And remember Ben Neiman just about absolutely drilled Jimmy Garoppolo at one point. It was a huge hit. And I mean, that one was that was another big play. So
and there are people out there saying that should have been a penalty.
That one I did not think was. There was some argument about, and now I'm blanking after the 75-minute nap, who drilled Garoppolo as he was going out of the bounds on the sideline.
Fenton.
Yeah, I thought it was. I was thinking it was Fenton. Yeah,
he was, but I did see that play specifically. He was inbounds. You cannot make that you cannot make that call when the player is in bounds. Granted, if that was Patrick Mahomes, I would probably be screaming the other direction, but you just can't make that play, or you cannot make that call as an official, is I guess what I would say.
Well, and I mean, exactly. And I thought it was consistent because, and even though Mahomes was going down, forward, he wasn't sliding to the ground when he got drilled by Ward there on the sideline. It was the same way. I mean, the way they protect quarterbacks, I think in the regular season, that might have been a flag. Maybe both those plays would have been, but they weren't going to be yesterday. That's for sure.
Okay. So I have to ask this question. Sorry, Ryan, but I have to ask. You sit here and you look at what Andy Reid has done in his career in Kansas City. And one of the things that really stood out to me in this game was how much different Reid seemed to treat it. Do you think that that's Andy changing what he's going to do in the future and growing from where he has been? Or do you think it's him looking at it saying, we have nothing after this. This is a Super Bowl. We're going to be more aggressive.
Well, I think it's almost a middle ground. I don't get the sense that Andy thinks that he has changed a whole lot there. He was asked in Monday morning, about the aggressiveness and going forward on fourth down. And, he first talks about it's like, well, hey, we went for fourth down during the regular season. Yeah, but not with the regularity and the aggressiveness that they did last night. Well, and he said it was a conscious decision that they said that they were going to go for it on 4th and 1. They were going to go for it on fourth and short all day long, and they did.
And he also said that they could have gone for it if they had been announced that Williams doesn't score.
Yeah,
which I sat there, I was like, yeah, I don't see that happening, but maybe.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been a Doug Peterson Philly special kind of call. I mean, what I thought, in talking about all the differences between these two teams and two head coaches, I think that one was a fairly significant standout play, and maybe that is something simply that Reid has learned over the years, and maybe he has known that in the playoffs I'm going to have to be more aggressive and have to go into these situations because I think that especially in this day and age in postseason football in the NFL and certainly the Super Bowl, you've got to go into it with the mentality that if it's 4th and short, going to go for it almost every single time, and you've got to have 4 or 5 plays that are money plays that you can go to at any one time. Reed had those, and they hit on all of them, and those were some beautiful plays. And he's like he said he had one dialed up for Damian for that if they had to go to it on fourth down when Damian scored. He had another one dialed up that they were going to bring in if they had to. So we get to see that one next season, I guess.
I was going to say, how far back can you go? 1928?
But Kyle Shanahan didn't do that. I mean, if he had some 4th and 1 plays in his back pocket, he didn't pull them out, and those were crucial. I mean, because the setting for those field goals was a big difference in the game, especially there at the end.
Well, and he went conservative at the end of the first half too. And
yeah.
I could not believe that. I just did not believe he was doing that.
I get it in the sense that Jimmy Garoppolo is his quarterback, and there's only so much you can do.
Right.
But then again, I think they could have taken. I mean, this is a team that runs the football, and they had been really successful with some misdirection and putting the ball on the ground, getting into Samuel's hands. I mean, they might if they even just stuck to the ground game, they might have been able to get some chunks that would have put him in a situation to maybe get a score. And they just, they got it completely away from him. I didn't think Shanahan coached a bad game. I thought he just made a couple of mistakes, but the biggest difference is that Andy Reid's got Patrick Mahomes and nobody else does.
And that's really what it comes down to, especially when you put yourself in that particular situation. I thought the option work was great. I mean, the line didn't play perfectly. They gave up a lot of pressure, lot of pressure. But I felt like they came on as the game went on. I thought that was pretty key as well, especially the sense of urgency that you felt when they got the ball back. What was it, at 6 minutes or whatever? I thought they came together as a unit, as 5, pretty well.
Yeah, and I turned to the guy that was sitting next to me when they came out on that drive for 8:53 left, and I said, okay, they've got to get this in the end zone before 5 minutes are left. If they can get into the end zone in less than 4 minutes, they got a chance because now they can get a stop and get the ball back. And they go out and do it in 2:56 or something?
Right.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is because when I said I went back and rewatched, I specifically watched the clock too because they got the ball with 9 minutes to go. They scored with 6 minutes, 8 seconds left, and got the ball back before it hit 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean
San Francisco didn't run any time off the clock at all. And you're sitting there going, wow, that was kind of a waste by San Francisco on that point.
And this goes back, and this brings in the Shanahan thing too. And, and I heard Soren Petro on 810 make a similar argument that I'm going to make. So I want to credit him so it doesn't feel like I'm stealing it completely. But I've been saying this for a while. I think that we all agree that Andy Reid is a quarterback whisperer. And if that is true, and I think everyone agrees that is true, then you have to ask yourself, is Donovan McNabb a Hall of Fame quarterback? I say no. Maybe there's some people out there who will say yes, but it's very, very borderline. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Donovan McNabb would have been that quarterback without Andy Reid?
No.
Not in a
I think he
years.
would have been a lot worse. And so that's the thing. I mean, Andy Reid was trying to win Super Bowls with good quarterbacks. Donovan McNabb and Alex Smith are good quarterbacks. They're not Hall of Famers. Now he's got a Hall of Fame quarterback, and Hall of Fame quarterbacks are what win Super Bowls.
Well, and let me play
Joe Flacco.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second. I'm not going to say Mahomes won't be a Hall of Famer because I definitely think that he's on the path to get there. But what do you think? Where do you think he stands if he's not with Reid? Because obviously, I don't think he's the best player in the NFL if he's not with Reid.
Yeah, I've wondered that quite a bit, and I think it's a great question. One you could really have a lot of debates about because, hey, even Andy Reid and Brett Veach and these guys will tell you that they thought he was the best player they've ever seen. And Andy Reid said that again, basically, he's just best quarterback he's ever seen. So yeah, he's going to be successful anywhere he goes. But I think that this, what we have seen Mahomes do at this point in his career, this early, you got to give a good chunk of the credit to Andy Reid because guys just don't come out and do this. And there wasn't any reason to believe that Patrick Mahomes was going to be any different than other guys. I mean, just based on his college career and he was certainly special, but there's a lot of guys who have been special, but this is a whole different level.
And that bodes well for the future. We're going to get into that. We're going to have Matt back later in the week, folks, so stay tuned for that. We appreciate you checking us out today, and we do have tons more for you coming. Nothing ever stops in the offseason around here. So, Matt, thanks for your time today, and we'll get back with you again. Folks, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Ryan Tracy is the founder of Rogue Analytics and the host of RGR Football on YouTube. Follow him there. Chris Clark is a senior analyst at Chiefs.